This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good morning, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining today's test subgroup meeting. Today, Keysight and Avis is going to join force and tell us what happens in the PlugFest 2021. And yeah, Mano, what's your takeaway? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on which part of the world you're from. So today we are going to quickly cover like what we covered in terms of the Plug Fest that we conducted mid this year, around June, July timeframe, and the learnings from that Plug Fest event we wanted to share with the community. And today I'm also joined by Vishal from Avis team, and I am Manodipto from Keysight. Um, and let this session be interactive. If you have any questions, just pop it up in the chat or let us know. So what we did as part of the Plugfest is first we had a vision to see where what do end users of Sonic want. So we started our goal with in talking to end users of Sonic, like the hyperscalers, like the enterprises who are adopting Sonic, and also some of the system integrators, network operators, and we started asking them the question on what they're looking for in Sonic. And then we also wanted to see, like, is Sonic ready for the prime time? So those are the main questions that we had in mind when we started envisioning the Plugfest, and we wanted to attempt to bring the whole community together to put Sonic under test, essentially, and not vendor versus vendor comparison. We wanted to see how matured Sonic is across different vendor platforms. So with that vision, we started as a neutral players, both Keysight and Avis team. We partnered and started working as neutral players, and formed this Plugfest core committee. And then we started reach out to the end user committee, as I said, what we call the customer advisory board. And we were quite lucky to have very good participation there. And you see some of the names in there, and there were more outside some of these logos that you see in the screen. So the customer advisory board was the first uh, body that we formed to kind of source all our feedback and requirements for the Plugfest. And then finally, we started reaching out to vendors, and obviously, due to these trying times that we are going through, we were limited to have a few vendors this time of the Plugfest, but we could accommodate around six vendors, cutting across ASICs and ODMs and switch vendors. So we were joined forces by Intel, EdgeCore, NVIDIA, Innovium, Delta, and Cameo. So we had good amount of participation, over 20 plus members in our customer advisory board, and six vendors who participated in the Sonic Plugfest this year. And we had, you can find a lot of information online if you start Googling it up. And there is some webinar that we did. There is also a couple of press releases that we did. So there are a lot of information floating around the web if you want to Google it up and search about Sonic Plugfest. So I will not dive deep into that. The objective is to go into the results. But towards the end of the slide, I do have some links which I can share in the chat also, so that you guys know where to find more information about the Sonic Plugfest, about the reports, and etc. So with that, let's take a look at the Plugfest results and the scoring methodology. And Vishal, do you want to quickly take over here?
Yeah. So let's move to the next slide. So before I get into the scoring methodology, one of the thing I want to talk here is that the topologies which we used were essentially for the management test cases. They were the single node topology, and for the scale, there were like back to back for control plane and protocol scaling, and then for the system level test failovers and things like that, we use leaf and spine 4 node topology. So there were three kind of topology: 1 node, 2 node, and 4 node. And when I say node, it's essentially the switches. So all these 6 vendors which Mano mentioned, they have sent us 4 switches each, so that we can have 3 different kind of tests run there. So anyways, that's the topology part. Now I want to get into this, how did we score, right? So if you see, we basically looked at 3 different pillars here. Is high level evaluation, that is on the left hand side, this particular pillar. Then on the middle is component level evaluation, and then goes into the protocol level evaluation. So when we say high level evaluation, we basically broken the whole tests which we have done in 3 different pieces. One is the sonic feature, which is essentially talking and which is essentially checking that on the feature level how solid the solution is. Then the second one is a scale, which is essentially scaling the protocols, different protocols. And then the operations. Operations is more like that you have a typical system in place, and then you are basically doing failovers, failbacks, route withdrawals, and things like that, right? So how a system will behave in an operational environment. Now the second part, from the same kind of test cases, we did the slicing on the basis of different components of a switching system. So platform test cases such as show commands, such as the temperature, such as the fan and things like that. Then the management, SSH, ping, then the layer 2 function and scale, layer 3 function and scale, and day 2 operation, we kept it separate. So you can see that now it's a different view altogether. And the third one, which is essentially kind of given to only cab members, which is more explanatory in nature, is essentially the protocol level view. So let's say in management, there were 4 protocol tested: SSH, ping, and there were a couple more. In layer 2, there were 5, like LSCP, VLAN, and things like that. So those same test cases were broken into that one. So these 3 were the framework. And then what we did is, let's say we had 6 vendors. So what we did for vendor number 1, we basically took the maximum passing rate for a particular vendor. We took the minimum passing rate across all 6 vendor, and then we took the average across all those vendors. So right now, the idea was to not pretty much say that this vendor is better than other vendor. What we had to say is that sonic, as in the solution, sonic as in the community, sonic as in the whole network operating system, how ready it is, which means that how what is the best solution out there and how good it is, what is the worst solution out there and how worse it is, and what is the average. And of course, we didn't name any vendor in there, because the idea was not to provide a competitive analysis. The idea was to provide the sonic report, right? So now moving on to the next slide. um, I'll just give you one example how it looked like. So this is the example for the feature, right? So you see, we have the aggregated minimum, which is the red circle here, the aggregated maximum, which is the orange line here, and the average, which is the minimum line. So you see, the vendor which we have tested, they were somewhere between 91 to 97% when it comes to feature. And yeah, it says essential here because the internal name of that package is essential. Then it comes to scale, the best vendor did at 93%, and the worst did at 76%, while average was at 81%. And similarly on the operations, the maximum was 100%, and the operations minimum was 73%. So it essentially tells you that what is the best, how Sonic is doing today in terms of the feature readiness, in terms of scale readiness, and in terms of operation, and not just looking at one vendor, but actually looking at the whole ecosystem, at least across the 6 vendors who took part in our Plugfest, right? Moving forward, um, Mano, if you can go to the next slide, please. This is from the the component level point of view. You see, I mean, now we are breaking it down into the platform and management and layer 2 function, layer 3, and day 2 ops. One of the important thing you see here is that there were platform issues were seen, primarily because there were couple of vendors who essentially had given maybe the proto switches or something like that. But there were issues in the platform side. The another bigger one, I mean, platform can be fixed. It's not that big, but the one big thing which we have noticed here is the layer 2 function at scale, which kind of shows that Sonic is actually, started the DNA from the layer 3 point of view, and layer 2 is now catching up as as Sonic is getting deployed in enterprise side. So layer 2, we have seen issues all across, especially in the scale side, wherein there were issues, right? And then your day 2 operations, as you can see, 73% passing. And day 2 operations is kind of the thing that, okay, how much time you decide that the route should come back up, let's say 10,000 route. And that also kind of depends upon the type of ASIC which you had, the type of switch you had. So there are certain assumptions which we have taken, which is essentially ties the results to a type of CPU, to the type of ASICs, which were in the Plugfest. Of course, if those vendor will provide in the future Plugfest as a higher CPU and a better ASIC, then of course those will be marked as passed and everything. All I'm trying to say here is that this day 2 operation, the failover numbers are also dependent on the hardware which we had. Uh, so it's a mixture of it's actually work versus the CPU and the ASIC we tested. Now those all details are available in the Plugfest report about what I'm talking, so you'll have more details onto it. But having said that, what we are projecting here is that best and the worst case scenario in those among six vendor. Okay, next slide. So this is the third pillar, which is essentially we showed to our CAP members, and this goes into the protocol level view. So you see, I mean, these protocols on the left hand side, they were all good, but then the problem started showing up onto towards the left hand side, which is clearly marked here. And you see that there are layer 2 features in there. There are operations like the longevity problems, which is essentially if you run it for long and then you start doing the failovers and all those kind of things, there were problems seen in that area. Failover failback was another area. And then the last one is FDB scale, where pretty much we have seen the area across all the vendors. And this is the comment I made in the previous slide, that layer 2 is something which we have seen problems, especially on the layer 2 scale. This slide is also available. The details of this is also available in our report. So you can actually, and that report is in, you can search in Google and download. So next slide. Yeah, so this is top known issues, and it is not like the issue from one specific vendor. There, some of them are there in all of the vendors. Some of them are there on only couple of vendors. So inconsistent FDB entries. So what we have seen is that uh, when you scale the FDB to more than, let's say, 4,000, 5,000, or 6,000, sometimes what happens is that it will just learn 80% of them, and not learn 100% of them. You leave the system, then some of the FDB entries will just not there. So that's why the FDB scale has we have seen the maximum issue. The CLI was also inconsistent in some cases between different vendors, where we had six vendors. So even though there was the community build, and there were a couple of distros we have tested as well as part of Plugfest, but the CLI was supposed to be same, but that they were different in some cases. Memory spikes were happening in longevity test when you run the test for long, let's say 12 hours. There were variants in the BGP convergence time. In the next slide, Dean will talk about it. There were issues in the reboot, warm, fast, and cold reboot functionalities that were seen. And then there were the BGP control plane had some issues related to it. So this is essentially a summary of the issues here. Now all of those issues which we have found, we have actually notified the vendors, and some of the issues were fixed actually while in the period of Plugfest itself, wherein we got the new build, that okay, try this build. Some of the issues are not fixed yet, and they are with vendor. I'll give the summary of that in the coming slides. But before we get into the summarization of the Plugfest, Next slide, maybe Dean, you want to take care of that, and quickly explain that the convergence number, I think, right? No, Mano, next slide probably,
Sure,
and Dean
sure.
can help there.
Just before we move on to the next slide, I mean, is there any questions so far? I just want to quickly pause because we went through a lot of content in a jiffy. Okay. So, Dean, do you want to cover this, or
Sure.
you want me to
Yeah,
quickly?
that's it. I mean, this is actually just a table to show the range of convergence performance. As you can see, I think there are a couple, there are actually three areas we have tested. The RIB capacity test and see how quickly the route learn and converge and start forwarding packet. So this, I think the various system have a different RIB sizes. So you can see there's a range from 49K to 148K. Of course, their convergence time would be different. So just kind of show you there's a range of capacity we have tested and identified and verified according to vendors' specifications. And there are various failover scenario. I think we simulate various scenario, local link failure, remote link failure that triggered topology change, route withdrawal, and with very different sizes of the BGP routes, and also measure the conversions in need for for the system to learn the new routes. And you can see, when we compare the results across 6 different vendors, you see the minimum, the best performance could vary, as an example, from 0.9 second all the way up to 5 seconds, the slowest. Like Vishal has explained earlier, it has quite a dependency on the hardware itself and ASIC, especially the CPU, the CPU and memory on the switch that make a huge difference. And so this is all noted down. I think we just kind of demonstrate and also provide a benchmark methodology for the CAB member to actually able to see and quantify the differences and see what is the best choice for their deployment, right? So there are a lot more data in here, including various of warm reboot, fast reboot, and cold reboot, and some of those tests are actually, I think like Vishal mentioned earlier, some of the system it just simply fail, couldn't even complete the test. That's why we didn't show the number there, but yeah, I think this is a simple result for convergence. Next slide. Back to you.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Dean. Before we move to the next slide, one quick comment is that for this whole Plugfest, we used a bunch of test cases which are part of our test packages offering, right? So that's the essential scale and day two operations test cases that Vishal mentioned earlier. Also, we have used some of the community tests, like the ones we upstreamed to the community, and this sample result was from one of the BGP convergence test plan, which is already there in the GitHub today, right? So we actually use that methodology to kind of bring these numbers. So there was a mix of different test cases that we used, a total of 100 plus 110, 120 test cases that we executed across the 6 vendors. So the sample set that you're looking at for all these results that we are sharing is kind of over like 600, 700 test execution. And obviously there were like multiple executions because we debug, we work with the vendors to kind of make sure that the bugs that we are seeing are real. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly take this one, the next slide as well. So some of the feedback, right? I mean, as Mano started this presentation saying that we created a body which is customer advisory board, which is essentially a set of customers who are either using Sonic already or gonna use Sonic in future, and asking them that what are the things they would like to see as part of the Plug Fest, and essentially from the deployment scenario, how their deployment looks like, so we can cover those cases of deployment, right? I mean, community is doing fantastic job in essentially making sure the quality of Sonic is good, but then there are customers who are basically looking for specific deployment scenarios, looking for failover numbers in the system topology and things like that. So that's why we formed the cab, and then there were a lot of inputs. There were 100 plus inputs we gotten from multiple customers, and we were not able to take care of everything into this particular Plug Fest. So some of the things were taken for future, and of course in future also, like in the next couple of months time frame, we are not able to cover everything, but we have prioritized the list which will be there in the next Plug Fest. Whenever we will do it, we will do the boundary test. So what it means is that instead of just trying from, let's say 32,000 route, we're going to be trying the best route a system can give. So essentially finding the boundaries of different kind of solutions, different kind of protocols. We're going to be having 400 gig solution in the Plug Fest next time. So right now we have only 100 gig this time. Then VXLAN EVPN, which we didn't cover this time, will be there. ACL cases will be there, breakout mode, and additional port attributes, which there is a details available in the cab. So all of this will be available in the next version of PlugFest whenever we do it.
Okay.
Okay. Next slide. So yeah, so I just want to quickly walk through that what and summarize that what all work was done in the Plugfest, right? So the first pillar here is essentially the facts of Plugfest, right? So what all work we have done there is one of the most important work we have done is formation of the customer advisory board, which is 18 plus customers strong, and it's going strong. They gave a lot of input, and then they are helping into setting up the roadmap of the next Plug Fest, right? So essentially what it means is that one of the most important thing, even before we reached out to vendors and everything, was to see that it are there customers who are looking for having such kind of a body, and we got a good interest from there, and that shows that there are a lot of customers out there who wants to deploy Sonic. If there are forces in the ecosystem which can provide what they are looking for, right? Then from our side, we put the effort. We basically ran 1,000 plus automated runs. I mean, we had I think around 100 plus test cases. We ran it multiple times, so that's why 1,000 times it ran. We discovered around 50 plus issues across multiple vendors, and some of them I walked through in the previous slide. We had 6 test beds in 3 different labs. I mean, we had Avis Network Lab in Fremont, and then we had Keysight Lab in San Jose, and then another Keysight Lab in Calabasas. So 3 different labs, and you can imagine, folks working in all 3 different labs. Out of the 50 bugs issues we have raised to different vendors, 20 of them got fixed by those vendors, and we retested them, right? So this is the amount of work which we have done as Keysight and Avis to make Plugfest and produce the report. In summarization, if I say what are the takeaways from Plugfest, is that we see that the ecosystem is ready, right? I mean, there when we started, within a month of effort, we were able to find 18 plus customers for forming up the cab, which means that there is a demand. And then we were able to find 6 vendors who shipped the switches and across the world to our locations within a month. So which shows that there is ecosystem readiness for Sonic, right? Within a couple of months we were able to arrange this kind of a Plug Fest. It shows that there are vendors who are ready and there are customers who are ready, right? It also shows that there are multiple options out there. We had to say no to a couple of vendors who wanted to have their 400 gig solution out there. So it tells us that there are multiple options available. Also, is that layer 3 features scale and management. It worked perfectly fine in different vendor solution. One of the thing which we were worry about is that how consistent Sonic is across multiple switches. Apart from some issues in the CLI, we think that it is fairly consistent across multiple platforms, and we tested 6 platforms, which includes different kind of ASIC and different kind of system. Now, what did not work good for us, right? So it's essentially the layer 2 scale. Number one, the FDB scale, the VLAN scale, that had a lot of issues pretty much in all the vendors. Failover improvements are the another one, and when I say failover, it's the convergence of control plane as well as warm reboot, and all sort of reboots had the problems. Then there were protocol gaps, and this protocol gaps is basically coming from the cab. These are layer 3 and layer 2 protocols, which are kind of asked by every customer in from the cab, that when they will be getting the solutions having these protocols. So these are the key findings on what basically can be improved. Now, next step, we basically have some recommendation here from the from the Plugfest and Avis and Keysight point of view, and we have broken it down into 2 different ways. And what do we say for customers, right? So for customers, we told them when we had the CAB meeting, and we did had a webinar, open public webinar, is to that you want to start with a POC right away. I mean, if even if there are a couple of features missing here and there, you need to start, get a support partner. There are lots of support option available in the market, and then basically use the plug and play apps. uh, there was this notion that if you have to have Sonic, you have to have like expertise in house. Well, that is true for big deployments. You want to have some expertise in house if you are having thousands of switches and everything. But if it is a deployment which you don't need expertise, there are applications available which works for Sonic. So maybe have an option to use that. Now, for this particular forum where we are talking today, I think vendor next steps are more important. So for vendors, focus on system quality. I mean, like I said, there's a phenomenal job done from the feature point of view, phenomenal job done from the total package point of view. But when it comes to system level quality, I think vendors need to do a little better job in there in terms of failover, failback, and scaling the systems and then testing it like as if it is going to go in deployment. From that point of view, if they test with community build, we saw the gaps there, so that can be fixed. Failover improvement is the another one which I covered with system quality. And protocol coverage is something, a call to action for community, is to how these features, which are EVPN, BGPN number, spanning tree, and MLAG, can be introduced into a community version of Sonic. I mean, we are as an Avis network, I mean, and Keysight, we are in community from past 2 years. There has been a lot of talks on essentially doing it, but I think we do have some version of EVPN available. But it is not across all the ASIC vendors. Spanning tree MLAG is another one which is kind of taking time. So this is call to action for community to essentially do something about it, because there are customers, all 18 plus customers in cab have asked for these features. So I think I'll stop here. I think Mano, there are more slides there, or this was the last one.
Yeah, no, there are a couple of more slides, but
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think I'll stop here. If there's any questions, guys, from the group here.
Do you do any investigation of friendliness to different manufacturers and versions of SFPs?
Well, SFP validation was not part of this Plugfest. We did get the request for that, and we will see if we can cover it in the next Plugfest. But this Plugfest, there was no SFP validation.
Thank you.
Yeah, we used the DAC cables. We just asked customers that, hey, just tell us which cable will work, and we will use that. That's all.
right. Okay. So as I mentioned, a lot of information available today as we speak, right? So there is a test report that you guys can have access to. I was trying to put that link on chat, but if Dean or Vishal, if you have the chat handy, because I'm presenting, I'm not able to paste it on the chat. That's the PDF report that you can get a copy of, and any questions you can like direct it to us. There's also a webinar that we did, and there is still the webinar is available as a recording if you want to listen into the discussion that we had in a little bit more detail oriented. So that's you're welcome to do that. So the next things the we are doing right now is, like, obviously we are doing the Sonic community readout today. That was one of the action items that we had. The other one is we want to keep the CAB active, like the Customer Advisory Board. We have a public group where we have invited some of the end users, and we have a forum to discuss any new feature requests, any feedback on the test content. And then obviously can find us in OCP Global Summit coming November. Hopefully we'll meet each other in person. And then we have subsequent plans for Plugfests throughout, and we have another regional Plugfest which we are planning for China, because some of the vendors in there were not able to kind of access or ship the devices to us for this US version of Plugfest that we did this year. So maybe later this year we will have another version in China, and then next year we'll follow up with the next version of the Plugfest. So we want to keep this going and help the community mature and help Sonic mature through these tests that we have, and also contribute back to the community any issues that we find, and also some of the test methodologies as we have done so far. Okay, I think that's kind of my last slide. If there are any questions.
Malo, I have a quick comment. I just want to clarify. I think this engagement of Sonic Plugfest with Customer Advisory Board, I just want to make sure this is not the event or organizations kind of designed to or competing or comparing with the Sonic community and test working group. I think I just want to make sure that is not the intention here. I think what we are doing here is a complementary and also a little bit more focus on the end user side, especially these tier 2, tier 3 provider and a lot of these enterprise network operator. I think we want to create this forum to assist and accelerate their Sonic adoptions, right? And also will be another channel to complementary to test working group. We will be able to learn, more specific test scenario or features they have in mind. And so we can feedback to the Sonic community and test working group and vice versa. I think one of the good example is the reboot scenario, which we have discussed in a test working group, and also with Ian and the team. And those test scenario are very effective. We actually had the chance to try it with a customer advisory board, and they like the results. They like the ability to validate that and also identify issues and bugs with several vendor and implementations. So all that experience is going to be upstream back to the test working group. There will be test cases available from the experience we learned from this Plugfest. So I just want to kind of clarify that, and so we can see this as an extension to get and learn more, especially enterprise customers challenge. And what we're doing here, we also put together these test cases as a commercial package. So it make it easier for enterprise operator to be able to utilize these test function for their, kind of remove the barrier. So they have a off-the-shelf package that help them test a lot of the different sonic features, and it kind of help them upgrade and update to latest and greatest open source build. And yeah, that's the purpose here. So this is complementary to accelerate the sonic adoption.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Anything else from anyone? I think there is something in the chat. Let me see. Oh, that's the link to the report. Okay, if there are no questions, then Ying, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, folks. That was very interesting. I think finding issues is definitely going to be a great thing for some community. And yeah, so I'm wondering, so you have three different dimensions you're looking at the system level. Can we go back to the slides? Sorry, maybe
Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
I didn't heard.
No worries. Let me bring it back in here and share my screen. Okay. Talking about this one, or
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. Yeah, it's essentially the same one. So sorry, can you go over one more again? What are the contents as operations, and what are you? So basically, what are the contents of what you define as essential, scale, and operation? Scale probably is easy to understand, but
sure.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, Manu, you go ahead if you want. I can.
Okay, so I was just about to summarize that. Yeah, so these are progressive tests. Like in the essential, we start with feature level validation, right? For example, very low scale functionality, whether it works, right? Whether these features are present in the sonic image that we are testing, right? And a very basic tests of like bring up a BGP control plane, send a few packets, and see if everything works. Now, the scale is more like unidirectionally or picking up the feature, let's say layer 2 VLANs or layer 3 BGP prefixes and scale them up, right? So put thousands of BGP prefixes and see how the system behaves. And most of these test cases are also multi switches, right? So they go from anywhere from one switch to up to 4 switches. So we scale the total test bed and see how the system under test is behaving. And finally, when it comes to operation, those are mostly like failover cases, like what happens when we withdraw those BGP routes, how the system behaves, does the control plane come back on time, is there any traffic disruption during those failovers? Those kind of tests are part of the operations. So those are distinct 3 areas, and all of them are executed in like as I said, in a test bed which consists of 1 to 4 switches.
Maybe I would
sure.
want to maybe go to slide 5. Go back to slide 5 real quick. Yes. So basically, we have like 100+ test cases, and for us to report scoring, we kind of organize into these 3 pillars. So the one model I just explained is the first pillar. This is the highest level. We can group these 100+ test cases based on their essential features, scale, and operation. Or we can go one level down, break it into like 5 subcategory. It's really based on their particular component feature, platform management, L2, L3, and operation. Or we can go one level down, break it down to 32 different subcategories, mostly based on the protocol features, right? So this just a way for us to describe the aggregated results across six vendors, right? I think for each vendor that participated this event, they have a detailed test results, basically a test fail, verdict, and detailed log recording for each, one of these 100+ test cases, right? And then for the public report and sharing with the customer advisory board, we create these 3-level reports to meet the purpose of this Plotfest. Yeah, so that's how we organize, this kind of report. In hope that answer your questions.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Steve. Cool. Any other questions, comments from the community? All right. Yeah, thanks, folks, for coming to today's meeting. Thanks, Keysight and Avis for the great report. Yeah, I'm glad to see all those tractions in the community to get more tests done, to understand sonic qualities. Definitely. Yeah. Thanks, folks.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
With
everyone.
that, I guess we can turn a few minutes to everyone. Cool. Sorry, I cut someone off.
No, I said thank you for the community have an opportunity to do this. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, folks. Have a great day, evening, depending where you are.
Yeah.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.